You're standing in a quiet room, the kind that collectors know all too well, wood shelves, soft light, and the gentle hum of history pressing against your senses. And then, almost out of nowhere, a small, unassuming object glints in your palm. A 5-cent coin, dated 1974. No mint mark. Just a smooth, unadorned field beneath Monticello's proud silhouette, but in that moment, something feels different, something whispers, something tells you this is not just another Jefferson nickel, because every once in a great while, a coin surfaces that defies expectations, challenges assumptions, and rattles the quiet confidence of even the most seasoned American collector. And the 1974 no-mint mark Thomas Jefferson nickel, when found with the right anomalies, the right strike, the right untold story, has been known to ignite a fire of speculation so intense that some believe examples could be worth millions of dollars. But what makes this particular 5-cent coin so magnetic? Why has it become a quiet obsession among those who know how to read the subtle language of metal, minting, and mystery? And what hidden truth does this 1974 issue carry, the truth that most collectors will never hear? Let's begin with the surface, because that's where every legend first leaves a trace. Imagine the obverse, Thomas Jefferson, forward-facing yet contemplative, rendered in the stoic realism of mid-20th century American engraving. His profile is sharp, crisp, the lines still strong despite the decades. But look closer, look into the shadow beneath the jawline, the slope of the collar, the way the light dances along the hair detail. Every genuine 1974 strike tells a story of pressure, steel, and the quiet hum of the dies that shaped it. Now shift your gaze beneath Monticello on the reverse. There is no D. No S. No P. Just clean, silent space, an absence that speaks louder than any letter could. Most 1974 Jefferson nickels without a mint mark hail from the Philadelphia Mint, a facility that produced enormous quantities every year. And yet, within these massive numbers, pockets of scarcity emerge. Striking quirks. Die deterioration patterns. Mid-production corrections. Unexpected die states. Slight rotations of the reverse. Tiny imperfections that turn an ordinary circulation coin into a whispered treasure. This is the heartbeat of the hunt, a coin born from abundance, but elevated by anomaly, because collectors know, true rarity often hides where the crowd least expects it, but this particular date carries another layer, historical undertone that adds weight to the story. The early 1970s were turbulent years for the U.S. Mint. Pressure for increased production, shifts in die-making technology, metal supply fluctuations, and broader economic uncertainty caused subtle inconsistencies in coinage, variances that today shine like signal flares for sharp-eyed treasure seekers. The 1974 Jefferson nickel is one of those issues where the minting landscape wasn't perfectly stable, and instability is where rarity is born. Imagine a die slightly misaligned. Imagine a master hub used just a little longer than intended. Imagine a planchet that carried a hairline anomaly, unnoticed as it slipped beneath the hammer strike. Any one of those moments, small, fleeting, nearly invisible, could create the very variation collectors dream about. Now picture this: a seasoned collector rummages through a forgotten box inherited from his father. Amid stacks of common dates, a single 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel catches his eye. Something about the rim. Something about the strike. Something he can't define but undeniably feels. He sets it aside. Months pass. One day he revisits it with fresh eyes, armed with a stronger loop and a sharper instinct. And suddenly, the truth breaks open: an extremely early die state, nearly proof-like surfaces, and a strike so razor-clean it borders on miraculous. In that moment, one ordinary 5-cent coin transforms into a mythic artifact. A coin that specialists whisper about in private. A coin that auction rooms hunger for. A coin that could, in the right setting, be worth millions of dollars. And here's the part that keeps collectors up at night: these dramatic survivors have no marker, no warning, no red flag from the mint to guide the modern treasure hunter. They were never announced, never documented, never separated from the masses. They simply exist, quietly waiting for the right hands to rediscover them. Imagine the psychological pull of that, the thrill of digging through rolls, through old jars, through inherited collections, knowing that one of the greatest modern sleeper coins could be resting behind a layer of dust, forgotten and unrecognized. And the 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel has another secret. A subtle twist that only the most advanced collectors tend to appreciate: that it sits at a crossroads in series history. Late enough for improved die-making technology, but early enough that inconsistencies still slipped through. This liminal space creates what some experts call invisible scarcity. The coins that matter are not always the ones that are officially rare. They are the ones that are conditionally rare. Unexpectedly rare. Accidentally rare. Think about that for a moment. The most valuable treasure might not be the coin everyone is searching for, but the one nobody realized they should. Now picture the registry set competitor, the elite collector whose instinct sees nuance where others see sameness. He studies the 1974 issue, hunting for sharp steps on Monticello, examining die cracks, polishing lines, minute-doubling shifts, planchet anomalies, even the delicate flow lines that reveal an early strike. He knows that in this date, this year, this absence of a mint mark hides opportunities that could rocket a coin from pocket change to legendary status. And in the world of elite collecting, perception becomes power. When a coin like this is found in top-tier condition, cold, brilliant luster, a flawless strike, a rare die state, it doesn't just enter the market, that it detonates. Collectors already know that the Jefferson nickel series has begun gaining momentum. New eyes. Fresh interest. Renewed respect for its underappreciated complexity. And within that surge, certain dates, like 1974, are quietly emerging as sleeper giants. Coins once brushed aside as everyday commonalities now glow with new importance. So ask yourself, what if the coin sitting in your hand right now is one of those anomalies? What if the software on Jefferson's cheek hides an early die strike? What if that lack of a mint mark is more than routine, it's the beginning of a story yet untold? What if your 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel is the next treasure waiting to step out of obscurity and into legend? Because here's the truth every elite collector knows deep in their bones: the rarest finds are often hiding in plain sight. History doesn't shout, that it whispers, and only the attentive hear it. As you hold that 5-cent coin, cool metal, subtle weight, the quiet dignity of Jefferson watching over it, you are touching a moment frozen in time. A moment when the mint was racing against deadlines, when metal flowed unpredictably across dies, when subtle errors slipped unrecorded into the stream of American commerce, and one of those moments might belong to you. So look again, check the strike, study the steps of Monticello, inspect the fields for a mirror sheen, a peculiar texture, an early die flare, because there is a chance, however slim, that your 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel carries a secret capable of rewriting its destiny, and yours. And here's the final twist, the part that even veteran collectors don't always talk about: every year, more hidden rarities vanish forever. Melted. Lost. Spent unknowingly in the chaos of daily life. Every day, the surviving population of extraordinary examples shrinks, tightening the window for discovery. Which means the next person to uncover a legendary piece might not be a dealer, or an auction house specialist, or a wealthy collector. It might be you. And if you think the story ends here, it doesn't, because there is one more secret about the 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel that collectors almost never discuss, one that could change everything you think you know about this unassuming little coin. But that is a revelation we will save for another time. You're sorting through an ordinary jar of forgotten change, when suddenly, one coin stops you cold. At first glance, it looks like any other Thomas Jefferson 5 cent from the early 1980s. But then your eye catches something unmistakable, something thrilling. It's a 1981 issue bearing the proud Philadelphia Mint mark. A coin most people would never notice. A coin millions of Americans handled and discarded without a second thought. Yet hidden among them is a variation so elusive, so dangerously rare, that certain specimens have been described by top-tier collectors as potentially worth millions of dollars. And the most haunting question of all is this: how many of these treasures are still circulating, quietly waiting for the one collector with the knowledge, and the nerve, to recognize them? Hold that thought for a moment. Picture the 1981 Thomas Jefferson 5 cent in your hand. Feel the weight, the familiar nickel-copper alloy that has survived decades of pockets, purses, car floors, and cash drawers. On the obverse, Jefferson's portrait, calm, steadfast, slightly softened by years of wear, looks not at you, but through you, almost as if he knows you've stumbled onto a mystery few will ever solve. And there, just to the right of Monticello's stately columns on the reverse, lies the clue that separates the mundane from the mythic, a crisp, unmistakable P. It was one of the first years the Philadelphia Mint placed its own mark on circulating 5-cent issues, ending a long era of quiet anonymity. In this subtle shift lies the seed of rarity, but how does a coin from a common year suddenly transform into a collector's obsession? It begins with stories whispered through the hobby for decades, stories of anomalies slipping into circulation as the mint adjusted its practices, recalibrated its dies, and balanced old and new production methods. Those early mint issues sometimes carried faint irregularities, slightly misaligned dies, minute doubling on the inscriptions, ghost-like steps on Monticello that were never meant to be perfect yet somehow came out sharp enough to stun experts. In rare cases, the coin seems to glow with an accidental precision, as if crafted by a minting artisan determined to leave a hidden signature. And the rumors grow from there. Imagine discovering one of those impossible variants, the kind that forces seasoned appraisers to lean forward, remove their glasses, and ask you to repeat the year again. The kind that makes a quiet room suddenly feel electric. Because when a 1981 Philadelphia 5-cent displays certain traits so specific, so fragile, so easily lost in circulation, the value doesn't simply rise. It leaps. It escalates into a realm only the elite collectors ever witness, a realm where even a single flawless specimen could be considered worth millions of dollars. Let's step back for a moment. Look again at that iconic reverse. Monticello, Jefferson's architectural masterpiece, stands firm beneath the crisp lettering. But the true connoisseur's eye goes immediately to the steps, 6 delicate lines that separate an amateur's coin from a legend. The full steps phenomenon is whispered like a password among collectors. Achieving perfect steps requires flawless die pressure, immaculate die polish, and a moment in the minting process where everything aligns like destiny. On many coins, those steps are soft, incomplete, worn before they ever leave the press. But on a rare 1981 Philadelphia specimen, the steps can appear so sharp, so impossibly present, that the coin feels almost sculptural. And that's where the legends begin, because collectors, especially those who have spent decades hunting for that one life-changing discovery, know this truth: the rarest finds never announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. They wait in old cigar boxes, dusty dresser drawers, and shoeboxes tucked beneath the bed. The idea that a 1981 5-cent could hold such staggering potential ignites something deep in the collector's psyche: the thrill of the chase, the joy of discovery, the intoxicating possibility that a seemingly common coin could rewrite one's entire collecting journey. But here's the pattern interrupt few expect: the 1981 year was also a transitional moment in American coinage. As inflation shifted metal values and the mint navigated new technology, subtle inconsistencies became surprisingly common, but only a handful produced genuinely extraordinary results. Some dies wore quickly, leaving softened lettering. Others were accidentally over-polished, creating ghost-like features. And just occasionally, a die would strike with near-perfect clarity before deteriorating. That small window, the precise moment of a fresh die's first perfect impressions, is where legends are born. Collectors whisper about first strikes not as marketing hype but as numismatic miracles. If a 1981 Philadelphia 5-cent emerged from the press with full steps, razor-sharp lettering, and flawless fields, it wasn't just a coin. It was an event. A moment in time captured in nickel. A snapshot of minting perfection that survived 4 decades of circulation barriers. And when one of those survivors appears, it creates shockwaves. Conversations ripple through auction rooms. Experts gather. And somewhere, someone realizes they're holding a piece of history that could be worth millions of dollars. Now imagine the emotional weight of that realization. Your heartbeat quickens. Your hands tremble, not because of the coin's metallic value, but because of what it symbolizes. It's not merely a collectible. It's proof that hidden treasures still exist in the modern world, waiting for those who refuse to stop searching. It's the universe whispering that persistence, knowledge, and passion can be rewarded in ways you never expected. But let's shift the lens for a moment. Think of the Philadelphia Mint itself in 1981, an institution steeped in history, evolving, innovating, yet carrying the burden of tradition. Every press, every die, every blank planchet carried the legacy of American craftsmanship. The minting floor buzzed with machinery, precision, and the human hands guiding the process. Somewhere in that vast operation, a handful of extraordinary 5-cent issues were born. Coins that defied statistical probability. Coins that time forgot, until now, and perhaps the most thrilling question for collectors today is simple: have we truly identified them all? Or are there still undiscovered variants lying dormant in personal collections, dealer bins, or rolling across supermarket counters at this very moment? That is the electric uncertainty that fuels the hunt. The 1981 Philadelphia Thomas Jefferson 5-cent is a reminder of a deeper truth: sometimes rarity isn't created, it's revealed. A coin becomes legendary not simply because of mintage numbers, but because of the stories collectors build around it, the anomalies that slip through the machinery, and the passion of those willing to look closer than everyone else. The coin becomes a mirror, reflecting the collector's own sense of patience, curiosity, and pursuit of excellence. So as you imagine this coin in your hand, ask yourself, what if your next ordinary 5-cent isn't ordinary at all? What if the sharpness of Monticello's steps, the clarity of Jefferson's gaze, or a subtle minting quirk is the key to unlocking a life-changing discovery? What if the next time you hear the clink of loose change, you're actually hearing the quiet echo of a hidden treasure calling out? The hobby of numismatics is filled with legends, but the 1981 Philadelphia Mint issue carries one of the most enticing mysteries of all: the tantalizing possibility that a common coin might conceal an extraordinary secret. And the deeper you look, the more it draws you in, because somewhere, in a safe, a drawer, or a jar of forgotten coins, a survivor of that rare minting moment still waits. And the only question left, perhaps the question this entire story leads to, is this: will you be the one who finds the next 1981 Philadelphia 5-cent that experts whisper about for generations to come? The Denver Mint mark, that modest D, tucked just to the right of Monticello, seems almost too simple to hold any intrigue. Yet collectors are learning that the 1986 D issue hides subtle inconsistencies, misstrikes, and transitional quirks that slipped past the machinery of Reagan-era production. Under the wrong angle of light, you might miss them. Under the right angle, your entire perception shifts. Why this year? Why this mint? Why does the 1986 D Jefferson 5-cent, out of all the unassuming coins of the 1980s, inspire whispers among seasoned collectors? The answer lies in the culture of the Denver Mint itself during that era. Efficiency was everything. Production targets soared. Machines pushed harder. Planchets fed through the presses at relentless speed. It was a perfect storm where a single misalignment, a subtle die fatigue, or a fleeting pressure irregularity could spark a numismatic miracle, that is the heartbeat behind the 1986 anomalies. Not dramatic errors that scream for attention, no. These are quieter, more elegant irregularities. Slightly doubled steps on Monticello. Phantom serif shadows on the Liberty inscription. Gentle arc distortions that trace the very edge of Jefferson's profile. To the untrained eye, nothing. To the trained one, a hidden key to value on a scale that borders on myth. And then there are the most elusive whispers of all, those ultra-rare, barely documented misstrike variants that some experts believe may exist in only a handful of examples, perhaps even a single one still sleeping in a forgotten jar. Every collector knows the thrill of the hunt. But this coin? This coin taps into something deeper, nostalgia for the era of worn blue coin folders and childhood discoveries, mixed with the refined instinct of a seasoned investor who knows opportunity when he feels it. It's that combination of memory and mastery that makes the 1986 D. Jefferson what it is, a quiet contender with the potential to shock the market. Not because it is flashy, but because it hides its power so effortlessly. Think back to 1986, America was humming with change. Technology accelerating. Markets evolving. Currency circulating through pockets, glove boxes, diners, toll booths. Somewhere in that swirling dance of commerce, one extraordinary 1986 D. Jefferson 5-cent might have slipped into circulation by accident. And somewhere, perhaps decades later, a collector, maybe someone like you, is destined to pick it up. The very idea that a stray nickel from the Cold War era could now be worth millions of dollars feels almost poetic, almost absurd, and yet, that is precisely what makes the chase irresistible. The Denver Mint's craftsmanship during this period was both a strength and a vulnerability. On one hand, the Mint had perfected mass production. On the other, the speed and pressure of that production created tiny windows, fleeting moments, where anomalies were born. Imagine a die tired from striking hundreds of thousands of planchets. The edges soften. A tiny alignment shifts. A microscopic burr forms where none should exist. And then it happens, one strike, perhaps two, a coin with the faintest irregularity that would one day separate it from the rest of its generation. Collectors talk often about 1980s coins as if they are too modern to command prestige. But is modernity really the enemy, or is it simply misunderstood? The rarity of a coin isn't about its age, it's about its survival. It's about the odds stacked against it. With the 1986 D. Jefferson 50-cent, survival is the story. Most have vanished into parking meters, car washes, coin rolls, or bank bags counted and recounted until all uniqueness was ground down to uniformity. What remains is a tiny fraction, those few that escaped, untouched, uncirculated, unspoiled by decades of wear. Imagine flipping such a coin in your fingers. The rim is sharp, untouched. The fields are clean. The luster spirals outward in that mesmerizing cartwheel pattern that only high-grade pieces display. You tilt it slightly. Something catches your eye. A line that shouldn't be there. A shadow that shouldn't exist. A design element that looks just a hair too bold. And suddenly, your breath catches, because you know. You've stumbled onto the kind of rarity people talk about only in hushed tones. This is where the psychology of collecting meets the drama of chance. Why do collectors chase anomalies like this? The answer is simple, because anomalies represent moments where the expected breaks, and the extraordinary enters. It's no longer just a coin. It becomes a symbol of opportunity, a flashpoint of history, a relic carrying the fingerprint of a single, irreplaceable moment at the Denver Mint. And then comes the question that haunts every serious collector. What if the most valuable 1986 D. Jefferson nickel hasn't been found yet? What if the real treasure is still out there, perhaps in a family drawer, a jar, a roll pulled from a bank just yesterday? It seems impossible. It seems unbelievable. But ask anyone who has ever discovered a hidden rarity, the impossible becomes very real as soon as it sits in your hand. Collectors who specialize in modern rarities often speak of the silent giants, coins that have gone overlooked for decades until one dramatic discovery rewrites the market. The 1986 D. Jefferson 5-cent fits that mold perfectly. It looks common. It feels common. But underneath its modest appearance lies the potential for an explosive revelation. And when a coin with that profile emerges in perfect condition with a rare anomaly, that's when markets shift. That's when headlines form. That's when a coin suddenly becomes worth millions of dollars, almost overnight. Imagine the bidding wars. The excitement. The shockwaves across the numismatic world. A coin that was once pocket change becomes a legend, but let's step back for a moment. Let's bring you into the moment as if you were the one discovering it. Close your eyes and imagine finding a crisp, untouched 1986 D. Jefferson nickel in an old roll. You turn it under a lamp. The details jump out at you, the angles, the steps of Monticello, the serif formations. Then, something unexpected, a doubling, a strike shadow, a pressure ripple. Your heart races. Could it be? Could this simple 5-cent piece be the missing treasure collectors whisper about? This is the emotional heartbeat of the hunt. Hope. Curiosity. Wonder. The sense that you might be holding more than metal, that you might be holding destiny. And here is the final twist, the part that keeps serious collectors awake at night. The 1986 D issues are still being rediscovered today. Rolls opened after decades. Collections inherited. Hoards uncovered. Every new discovery sparks the same question: is this the one, which leads us to you? Because the next monumental find isn't locked in a museum. It isn't part of a display case under glass. It might be sitting within reach, waiting for the right eyes to notice its quiet, extraordinary truth. So before you spend another 5-cent piece, before you dismiss another Denver Mint Jefferson from the 1980s as too modern or too common, remember this: sometimes the smallest coin carries the biggest secret. Sometimes the most unassuming piece becomes the one that rewrites the rules. And somewhere out there, a 1986 D. Jefferson nickel is waiting for that moment when someone finally recognizes it for what it truly is: a hidden masterpiece, a survivor of chance, a treasure that could be worth millions of dollars. The only question now is this: will you be the one who finds it? Most collectors walk right past it. Most eyes never see it. But today, you will. And once you hear its story, you'll never look at a Jefferson 5-cent the same way again. The 1987 D. Thomas Jefferson 5-cent piece sits at a fascinating crossroad in American numismatic history. Not because it's old, it isn't. Not because it's flashy, it absolutely isn't. But because it exists inside a paradox: a year of routine minting, predictable production, and a national economy shifting beneath the surface. Yet somehow, a handful of these coins escaped into the world holding secrets that still keep serious collectors up at night. Let's begin with its face, the profile of America's third president, sculpted by Felix Schlag decades earlier but still carrying an understated intensity by the late 1980s. The lines are crisp, the gaze steady, the cheekbones accented by the sharp metal relief that the Denver Mint had refined to near mechanical perfection. But what collectors notice, what experienced collectors feel, is the subtle tension between design and execution. The Denver Mint in 1987 was a machine of colossal output. Billions of coins moved across its presses, each one intended to be as uniform as possible. But uniformity is an illusion. When you strike metal at industrial speed, with dies that wear down, shift, slip, or fracture at microscopic levels, accidents are inevitable. And sometimes, those accidents become legends. So imagine that 1987 D5 cent in your hand again. Rotate it just slightly. Look deeper. You may notice an unusual weakness in the date, where the 1987 seems oddly soft, as though the die was tired, or crumbling. You might see a faint doubling on Liberty, barely perceptible unless you tilt the coin under a white LED light. You might even find the mythical die break, an interior fracture creating a raised metal line like a lightning bolt near Jefferson's eye. Collectors whisper about these variations because they are elusive. And when found in pristine, untouched brilliance, that's when the whispers turn into awe. That's when the coin transforms from a mundane 5 cent into a specimen some enthusiasts describe, without hesitation, as worth millions of dollars in the right conditions, with the right anomaly, in the right bidding war. And yes, bidding war is the correct phrase. When a rare Jefferson 5 cent variation appears on the market, it does not simply sell. It becomes the center of gravity in a storm of wealthy collectors who see the chase not as a hobby, but as a conquest. Prestige is the currency. And scarcity? That's the fuel. Now, let's step back in time for a moment. The year is 1987. America is grappling with sudden economic dips, Wall Street anxieties, and cultural shifts that make the world feel unsteady. Coins minted in this turbulent era have always carried an unintended emotional weight, small metal witnesses to a country recalibrating itself. When the Denver Mint produced the 1987 D. Jefferson 5 cent, no one intended it to become borderline mythical. It was a workhorse coin, a utility piece built to endure coffee counters, vending machines, and pockets full of lint. But the beauty of numismatics lies in its ability to elevate the ordinary. To turn forgotten metal into a chapter of American heritage. Collectors often say that finding a legendary coin isn't about luck, it's about being prepared when luck arrives. And this coin, this seemingly ordinary 5 cent, embodies that truth perfectly. Because out of all the variations known to exist, only a few carry the precise combination of rarity, condition, and anomaly that vault them into the realm of million-dollar prestige. But here's the cliffhanger. How do you know if your 1987 D. Jefferson 5 cent carries that potential? Start with the fields, the open spaces beside Jefferson's profile. On rare high-grade examples, these fields shimmer like a mirror, untouched by circulation. They appear so flawless that even a single scratch can feel like a tragedy. Next, analyze the mint mark. The D should be crisp, sharp, and well-formed. But under certain conditions, the mint mark can show doubling, rotation, or unexpected distortion. That's where things get interesting. Pattern interrupt. Did you know that the Denver Mint once produced an entire batch of coins in the 1980s with improperly annealed planchets? Those pieces came out with strange tones, golden hues, violet sheens, smoky blues. To an untrained eye, they look damaged. But to the elite collector, they look like a gateway to an entirely different bidding stratosphere, back to the 1987 D. If you notice that your coin carries an unnatural tone, something ethereal, almost antique, that could signal a metallurgical quirk. Combine that with an off-center strike, die crack, or an early die state, and you're holding a treasure that most collectors would trade entire albums to obtain. But here's where the emotional hook tightens. No one expects the 1987 D to be valuable. That's the leverage. That's the thrill. That's the moment veteran collectors live for, The moment when an unassuming coin turns out to be a generational anomaly. The moment where a 5-cent piece becomes a life-changing artifact. Now imagine this: a wealthy collector, decades of experience, portfolios full of Morgan dollars, St. Gaudens double eagles, early mint state Washington quarters, yet somehow, amid that glittering empire, the coin they cannot stop thinking about is the 1987 D. Jefferson 5-cent they missed years ago at a local estate sale. Why? Because regret is the most valuable currency in collecting. It is the force that drives someone to bid higher, fight harder, and refuse to lose another opportunity, and this coin feeds that emotion masterfully. It hides in plain sight. It tricks beginners. It challenges experts. It rewards only those who pay attention to the microscopic details and trust their instincts. Collectors often talk about the thrill of the hunt, but in truth, the hunt is only thrilling because the stakes are psychologically enormous. What if you walk past a coin today that could have rewritten your legacy tomorrow? What if the treasure you're searching for is already in your collection, waiting for your second glance? The 1987 D. Jefferson 5-cent holds that exact psychological power. It reminds us that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits unnoticed in an old jewelry box. Sometimes it's tucked inside a dusty inherited jar from a relative who never cared for numismatics. And sometimes, just sometimes, it surfaces at the perfect moment to rewrite a chapter of someone's future. As you listen to this, collectors across the country are checking their rolls, flipping through forgotten boxes, revisiting old purchases with fresh eyes. Because the truth is simple, the rarest treasures often hide inside the most ordinary containers, and here's the final twist, the part that keeps collectors awake long after the search is over. What if the rarest 1987 D. Jefferson 5-cent, the one with the perfect die state, the flawless surfaces, the once-in-a-generation anomaly, has not yet been discovered? What if the greatest example of this coin, worth millions of dollars in the right room, has been sitting unnoticed, ungraded, unrecognized, waiting for the right pair of hands to finally claim it? And what if those hands are yours?